Now we are moving to the opening panel, The Future is Green and Inclusive. I would like to pass the floor to Ms. Salome Zurabishvili, Executive Director of the Global Compact Network Georgia Chair and Chair for the Regional Network Council for Eastern Europe, and would like to ask panelists to turn on their cameras. Dear Salome, floor is yours.
Dear colleagues, partners, distinguished panelists, government and business sector representatives, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of the Global Compact Network Georgia, I would like to thank you for participation in the Making Global Goals Local Business Georgia Regional Conference. MGGLB Georgia is a flagship event organized by the United Nations Global Compact and the Global Compact Network Georgia, together with 4 networks in Belarus, Poland, Turkey, and Ukraine. The event is supported by the Swedish government within the framework of the Leadership for Sustainable Development in Georgia project, and the partners of the event are International Finance Corporation and the State Secretariat for Economic Affairs of Switzerland. Making Global Goals Local Business Georgia brings together high-level representatives from the government, business, local and international organizations to generate the conversation and mobilize business action for sustainable development goals. The theme of this year's event is The Future is Green and Inclusive. We are living in a world faced by man-made threats to societal, environmental, and economic well-being. The COVID-19 pandemic and the ensuing economic recession, growing social inequality, climate change, the factors only begin to skirt the surface. In 2015, United Nations member states came together to adopt a global strategy that would support inclusive sustainable development and economic growth across the world. The Sustainable Development Goals set objectives that guide states on how to overcome existing sustainability challenges and go beyond to improve the quality of life of human beings everywhere in the world. It's one thing to set an objective and it's another to implement it. Achieving the Sustainable Development Agenda is beneficial for all parties involved, the state, the business sector, civil society, and local communities. Therefore, each of these stakeholders needs to play a role in the implementation of the goals. The 2-day event will initiate discussions among major stakeholders of the participating countries on the important issues such as how to promote green economy and implementation of Agenda 2030. What is the business case to make ecologically sustainable economic choices? How the financial institutions support development of green and clean technologies, and also how important it is to partner for the businesses, civil society, government, and different stakeholders in order to promote green and inclusive economy and implementation of the SDGs. The Global Compact Network Georgia has been actively working for the promotion of the United Nations Global Compact 10 principles and sustainable development goals in Georgia for the last 5 years. As of today, the initiative unites 82 members on the local level, representing large, medium, and small-size enterprises, as well as associations, academic institutions, international and local organizations. We're glad to see that the interest of the companies in Georgia and in the region in the field of sustainability is growing quickly. Now is the time to fast-track zero-carbon economic growth, mobilize business, and accelerate progress towards the objectives of the Paris Agreement. On behalf of the Global Compact Network Georgia, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to my colleagues from the UN Global Compact headquarters and from the local networks in Ukraine, Poland, Turkey, and Belarus for their immense contribution to this event. I would like to wholeheartedly thank speakers of the event for their time and commitment. Special appreciation to the Swedish government for supporting our work on the promotion of corporate sustainability in Georgia, as well as to our partners from the International Finance Corporation and SEGO. And last but not least, thanks to my amazing team at Global Compact Network Georgia for making this event possible. I wish you all the fruitful discussions during these 2 days. And now I would like to pass the floor to the CEO and Executive Director of the UN Global Compact, Ms. Sanda Ojiambo.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome. I'm grateful for this opportunity to share some comments. So ladies and gentlemen, business leaders and friends who are gathered here today, it's a great pleasure to greet the UN Global Compact local networks and their participants in Georgia, Ukraine, Poland, Turkey, and Belarus at this special event on making global goals local business. The topic of this session, securing a green and inclusive future, could hardly be more important to the region or to the world at this moment in time. Because as we prepare for the COP26 climate conference in November, we cannot afford to hit pause on climate action. And it is important to ensure that all countries keep working to update their national contributions to the Paris Agreement, as well as their long-term climate strategies. Events like this one that are convened with many stakeholders are critical for generating the ambition and the action that we need to tackle the climate crisis. And indeed, we are seeing signs of progress. In February, for example, the Ukrainian government announced its cooperation with the European Commission to align Ukraine with the European Green Deal, which aims to make the continent climate neutral in the next 30 years. Key priorities for this cooperation include climate governance architecture, energy efficiency, hydrogen production, and a just transition to a green economy. The UN Global Compact encourages such high-level cooperation across Eastern Europe. It has great potential to catalyze what we call ambition loops. These are positive feedback loops in which bold government policies and private sector leadership reinforce each other to support ambitious climate action. But of course, before any government in the region aligned with the European Green Deal, it must understand the expected impact of the transition to a green economy. And that requires consultations and active engagement with business leaders from a variety of sectors, primarily sectors such as agriculture, transport, energy, steel, chemicals, and manufacturing. This process is underway in Georgia, where the EU-Georgia Association Agreement underscores signatories' responsibility to cooperate on the transition to a green economy. And in keeping with that transition, Georgia's new draft strategy on small and medium-sized enterprises gives priority to sustainable development and the circular economy. At the Global Compact, we welcome these policy shifts. Allow me to reflect on our new strategic plan for the next 3 years that gives particular attention to the needs of small and medium enterprises and also focuses on the goals of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Climate Agreement. The North Star for climate action by businesses of all sizes is net zero growth in carbon emissions. But to get there, we must all reach a state in which human activity and business activity no longer causes the massive accumulation of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. In the context of Turkey, Poland, and Belarus, the European Green Deal will likely accelerate a green transition by both industry and government. Thanks to highly integrated bilateral relationships and value chains, many businesses in these countries are already aligning their strategies with climate-sensitive norms and standards. And as a result, sustainable energy planning is in progress, and investments in renewable energy are growing. Science-based decarbonization is at the core of these effective net zero strategies. And through deep and profound emission cuts across all sectors of the economy, such strategies aim to limit global warming to the critical threshold of 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Therefore, any credible net zero target should be backed by a plan to reduce emissions in line with science. And we're very excited to see the beginnings of this corporate leadership in Eastern Europe. In fact, statistics tell us that 9 major Eastern European companies have committed to set emission reduction targets through the Science Based Targets Initiative. And so far, 2 have had their targets validated. I've spoken much about climate because for us, we seek to urge every company to join this effort by signing on to the UN Global Compact's Business Ambition for 1.5 Degrees campaign, which is led by the UN Global Compact and the Science Based Targets Initiative. Only through a wider movement can we truly accelerate business action to match ambitious policies and reach net zero by 2050. Meanwhile, as the world begins to recover from the devastation of COVID-19, we have an opening to drive action on adaptation and resilience, because we must build back better and greener. At the UN Global Compact, all of our participating companies and organizations have committed to follow 10 universal principles on human rights, labor, the environment, and anti-corruption. And we believe by embracing the 10 principles across operations and value chains, companies will contribute to a more sustainable future. So along with international labor standards and regional climate discussions, these 10 principles serve as a guide for business to recover from the pandemic. Because one thing is clear, at this moment in time, business as usual is not an option. So in Eastern Europe and worldwide, we must work together to build on the progress we have made, set high ambitious targets, and more ambition loops in motion for positive changes to come. Ladies and gentlemen, I think making the zero carbon economy a reality will require close collaboration by the private sector, government, the UN, civil society, and other partners. This task presents immense challenges, but also great opportunities for the future, because companies can reinvent themselves, transform their supply chains into engines for sustainable development, create business models in which principles and profit go hand in hand. So at this historic moment for Eastern Europe and for the planet, I urge you all to accelerate your support for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement. And the UN Global Compact is here to work with you to unite business for a better world. Thank you very much.
Dear Sanda, thank you so much for the inspiring speech and for this call to action. It's very important that you are supporting this cause in the Eastern Europe, and we are very happy to have you at the MGGLB Georgia. Now it is my pleasure to give the floor to the Minister of Environmental Protection and Agriculture of Georgia, Mr. Levan Davitashvili.
Thank you, Salome. Distinguished colleagues and ladies and gentlemen, let me greet everybody. And first of all, allow me to express my real appreciation to the organizers of this event and the Swedish embassy and Swedish government. I'm glad to have an opportunity to discuss Georgia's climate change policy process for implementation of Paris Agreement, supporting innovative solutions for fast-track low carbon economic growth and accelerate progress towards objectives of Paris Agreement and, of course, SDGs. The global health crisis has created grave uncertainties across the world. In response, governments of all countries have brought in unprecedented measures to curb the spread of virus. Overall, this pandemic and climate change together threaten stability of whole society in the world, and of course, it can cause unprecedented financial, social, and environmental crisis. Georgia keeps its enhanced low carbon emission trajectory through increased reliance on renewable energy sources and further reduction in the demand for fossil fuel in the country. And of course, in my country, we have already provided incentives towards both of these aims. Households and small businesses can now transfer electricity produced from PV systems back to the grid. The COVID-19 could be seen as a momentum for me for choosing the green recovery by incentivizing clean energy packages for economic sectors. And obviously, this challenge can be overcome by collaboration with our international partners and by sharing our experiences gathered during this pandemic period. Also, let me state that our common responsibility is to communicate increased ambitions through our updated national determined contributions, so-called NDCs, and long-term strategies on climate change, and of course on climate-friendly, low-emission development pathways. Georgia has updated already its NDC, which includes very more ambitious targets. Mostly, we have a conditional commitment to reduce the total amount of greenhouse gas emissions at the national level by 35% compared to 35% by 2030, of course, in comparison with the levels registered in 1990. And Georgia makes a conditional commitment to reduce the total amount of greenhouse gas emissions by 50 to 57% by 2030 compared to year 1990, provided that it will receive international assistance. For NDC implementation, we have developed also 2030 climate change strategy and 2021-2023 shorter term action plan, which covers 7 sectors of economy. Mostly this is energy generation and transmission, waste, buildings, transport industry, agriculture, and forestry. And all of them are in transformation process in order to enable country to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and be decent partner for all countries aiming achieving the temperature goals of Paris Agreement. Both documents, as I said, as NDC document and National Climate Change Strategy are already transferred to the government for further approval. We see new NDC and climate change strategy as an opportunity for the country to pursue innovative ways for development, as climate mitigation is all about innovation and new technologies, which benefit of this is, of course, to all sectors of economy. To support that process, we are starting to work on technology needs assessment, which will enable us to identify and introduce the best available technologies for supporting our climate goals. However, I should highlight that not a single government or a single private sector can deal with this complex process. I would say the private sector and government should go hand in hand to achieve good results. That's the only way. Let me give you an example in our country, in Georgia, which demonstrates our approach to have private sector on board for greenhouse gas emission mitigation domestically, and it's a great cooperation between the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Agriculture and German Federal Ministry of Environment and Nature Conservation and Nuclear Safety within the frames of Nitric Acid Climate Action Group initiative. We cooperate to support reduction of greenhouse gas emission from nitric acid production in Georgia, and there is a particular case that joint stock company Rustavi Azoty, which is one of the major industrial plant, will be co-financed by 50% to equip it with nitrogen oxide absorb technology. In a climate change perspective, the emissions from this production contribute to national total emission by 5% annually, you can imagine. So accordingly, this abatement technology utilization by the factory would significantly uphold domestic mitigation target. And this is just a single example of having private sector on board and good cooperation between the government and private sector. Let me give you also my idea that implementation of SDG 13, urgent actions to combat climate change and its impacts on is for me an utmost importance, because I'm convinced that activities towards speeding up the progress of zero carbon economic growth will directly or indirectly benefit well implementation of the majority of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It affects almost all SDGs, as climate change affects all parts of our economic activities or lives. As I have already mentioned about concerted actions and very active cooperation with our international partners by sharing the existing experiences and new ideas is very necessary to achieve the Agenda 2030. It is really that due to COVID-19 pandemic, we are facing more challenges, but I think that actions addressing environmental challenges should not be postponed anyway. Moreover, we have to seek innovative ways in meeting them, and of course, along with governments and international partners, and of course, business and private sectors, we need local communities, civil society, and youth, most innovative, motivated, daring generation with new proposals and approaches as agents for changes should be actively involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davitashvili, for highlighting very important reforms and commitments that the government of Georgia has taken to tackle the climate change and to promote green economy in Georgia. Also for the good examples of the private and public partnerships for the environmental cause, which was very important to hear. We do hope to continue close cooperation with the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Agriculture of Georgia to promote the work of the business sector as well in this area. Thank you once again. And now I would like to give the floor to the member of the Parliament of Georgia, the first deputy chair of the Environmental Protection and Natural Resources Committee, Ms. Khatia Tselosani.
Honorable guests, dear ministers, ambassadors, thank you very much for this opportunity to deliver speech on this high-level meeting and to underline the importance of making global goals local business. So it is really, really important for the government of Georgia and for the people of Georgia, I would say, to be part of the agreement which was set on 2015 between the international communities, saying that we should work jointly to meet the challenges coming from different perspectives and to establish the goals of sustainable development. Starting from that time, of course, government of Georgia, together with all the relevant stakeholders, decided to prioritize SDG implementation and volunteered to align its national policies and national approaches with the global goals. But of course, this is not the easy task. And we all know that there are different challenges from different countries' perspective. And Georgia is like developing country, striving to become part of the European family, and EU-Atlantic integration is something which is important international agenda for us. And of course, the Parliament of Georgia is working very hard to be part and active actor in this process. So Environmental Committee mainly focuses to create the legal basis for the good practices for the government and for the private sector as well, to meet the challenges and to simplify and implement the goals in a way that it will be in line with the international commitments. But what we see the most important is the internal agenda for us. I mean, the commitments to each other to reduce greenhouse emissions, to protect our environment, to take care of the natural resources and biodiversity, and also to meet the challenges coming from the increased waste, and also to think about how to implement all these directions in the everyday activities. And so we see that without the support of international community, this is not simply possible, and we are very grateful to our partner countries. And I want to say once again, thanks to Swedish government for their tremendous contributions to the environmental sector of Georgia, and also German government. I don't want to miss anyone because we are happy to have good friends, and this also underlines the importance of international cooperation, and joint vision is something which is common for us, and we agreed in advance that the tackling of challenges and securing environmental damages is something which will bring more sustainable future for all of us. So we, as the country, are of course the partner and member of different international organizations, and we are happy to share the great value which are the core principles of the cooperation of those organizations. And I want to say that the committee jointly and in very close cooperation with our international partners, with the ministry and with the government of Georgia as a whole, elaborated the action plan for the coming 4 years to support the private and public partnership to create the legal basis and to promote more sustainable development and to promote inclusive development in the country. And of course, we see that it is ambitious agenda because it requires, first of all, transformation of mindset in many directions, because as we speak about the reduction of greenhouses, we know that it will affect to the industrial development of the country. For the developed countries, it is easy to decrease the greenhouse emissions, but green gas emissions. But for the country like Georgia, which is on its way to development, it is rather challenging because we are now building new factories and we are now in the process to really have a well-developed industry in this country. And the strategic documents, which is adopted by different institutions, is trying to envisage the greener approaches in it. But of course, from the very beginning, it is costly and challenging for the business. And in order to be on the same page with the business community, the committee of the parliament created a working group which unifies governmental institutions and the business representatives. And before the adoption any law or initiation of any bill, we are having consultations with the private sector. This is also something we feel that is important. And you know that we are also a very open country for the foreign direct investments, and we are trying really to attract investments from different countries. For this, we need to have proper environment, both economic environment and environment as such, because you know, we give a lot of importance to the a clean environment and the friendly, business-friendly environment as well. So COVID pandemic once again showed the importance of environmental aspects, because every single step that was taken from the government side, and I'm sure this was common for many governments and even in your countries, when we made painful decisions to restrict some economic activities, it has a positive impact on the environment, but the challenging and sometimes very depressive impact on different activities. But we should not stop our efforts to be more focused on the environmental topics, and especially we need to be very active and proactive, I would say, in the implementation of climate agreements. You know that Georgia has committed to be part of the Paris Agreement, and also we are now working to transpose the provisions of the Green Deal in our national policies as well, and we are trying to support renewable energy development in the country as well. Of course, this is not an easy task, but we believe that with the good coordination with our partner countries, with the government, inside the government, and with the legislative branch, we can really have the good results of this. And also, I believe that the environmentally responsible decisions and the proper transformation of green approaches in natural resource management can generate more jobs, sustainable employment, and overall sustainable development for the country. We give a lot of importance, as I said, to the climate agreements, and international cooperation should be the key method in fighting climate change and establishing linkages between different actions. As many of the recent initiatives demonstrated, we should support mitigation and adaptation aspects in order to reduce environmental damages and to establish common environmental standards, enable technology transfer, and fostering multilateral actions while banning environmentally hazardous implementations. So dear participants, all mentioned about the decisions of Georgian government and Georgian parliament belongs to all of us, I believe, and because together we are stronger to be ahead of the challenges, and in case of such challenges, we can do more together rather than separately. So during creating legal frameworks, establishing standards and supervising execution of the policies, we must not forget that we speak about sustainable development, and our goal is to set all the goals by 2030 to be sure that no one is left behind. So we are all equal, and we have equal responsibility and obligation of making global goals local business. In this, I want to thank you for your kind attention, and I wish the event successful development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Khadija El-Sani, for very important remarks. It is truly important that the Parliament of Georgia promotes the green economy from their side, and the public-private dialogue is also relevant in this regard. And I'm happy that the Parliament of Georgia is actively communicating with the companies, and we're hopeful for the further cooperation in this regard to also facilitate this dialogue in the future. Thank you once again, and now I have a pleasure to pass the floor to His Excellency Mr. Ulrik Tideström, Ambassador of Sweden to Georgia. Mr. Ulrik, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm really honored to be part of this event, and it's good to see so many friends and partners on the screen. Now, as you know, Sweden stands firmly behind Agenda 2030, the implementation of the SDGs and the Paris Agreement. We are strong supporters of the UN Global Compact in our own country and around the world. Back home, the Swedish Global Compact Network has over 400 participants by now. And here in Georgia, we are really proud to be partners with Global Compact Network Georgia since 2018, and really happy to work together with you and other partners, including the Parliament and Government of Georgia, to jointly make a difference in pushing forward the implementation of the global goals in this beautiful country. Making global goals local business, that is exactly what we need to do. We have to make the SDGs our business. We have to ask ourselves what we can do individually and jointly, and then take action. And I believe that this event can be truly helpful in these endeavors. So I really want to commend the organizers and all the participants, also on the regional approach that you have chosen. There are so many things that we can learn from each other, and a lot that we can do together. As a bonus, for me personally, this format happens to bring together some of my favorite countries where I've had the pleasure of living and working. The theme for this opening session is about our future, a green and inclusive future. Now, we all agree on this goal, and today and tomorrow we will discuss how to get there with a focus on the shift to a circular economy and zero carbon economic growth, or why not a shift to climate positive products and services. From my side, I would like to make 3 points. They may be obvious, but I nevertheless regard these 3 things as essential. First, we need to work together. It has been mentioned by, I think, all previous speakers. The climate crisis doesn't know any borders. The drivers of climate change are not limited to specific sectors or actors. We are all, in a sense, part of the problem. We are all affected by it, and we all need to be part of the solution. So just like today and tomorrow, we need to engage in multi-stakeholder dialogue between governments, businesses, civil society, international organizations. We need to establish and strengthen new partnerships and share innovative solutions across sectors and across country borders. This is the only way. My second point, as the Swedish example shows, implementing the global goals and shifting to a green and inclusive economy is not just the right and necessary thing to do, it is also indeed good business. As one of few industrialized countries, Sweden has managed to combine job creation and economic growth with falling emission levels and reduced pollution. And if we can do it, anyone can do it. As governments, our role is not least to set ambitious policies and create incentives for the green shift. Let me give you just some brief examples of how Sweden has done this. Back in 1967, we passed our first Environmental Protection Act as the first country in the world. In 1972, 49 years ago, Stockholm hosted the first UN conference on the environment. And next year, we're going to invite the world to the Stockholm 50+ conference to contribute to a higher pace in the transition to green and sustainable societies. In 1991, we introduced the world's first and comprehensive carbon tax. Since 2006, we are subsidizing a shift to electric transport. In 2012, 8 years ahead of schedule, we reached our 2020 target of 50% renewable electricity. And looking ahead, we have even more ambitious goals, including going fossil-free by 2045 with 100% renewable energy. Lars Hans mentioned this in his keynote speech, including the innovation partnership programs that we have set up to reach these ambitious goals. So we have combined this green shift with a more inclusive economic model, not least by making progress on gender equality, including women's economic empowerment and a more equal representation in decision-making. And just like the green shift, gender equality is not just the right way to go, it is also the smart thing to do. What society will best reach its potential and what society will be more sustainable? One where the male half of the population sits on all the rights and resources and does all the decision making, or the society where everyone has the same possibility to engage and contribute on equal terms. So to sum up this point, a green and inclusive economy is not only the right thing to do, it is not only the sustainable solution, it is indeed also good business. So now my third and final point, it is time for action, it is time for concrete steps. The ongoing pandemic has created unprecedented challenges across the globe. It has disrupted the implementation of many of the SDGs. In some cases, it has reversed years of progress. And at the same time, the global warming continues. So without losing the necessary focus on the pandemic and its socio-economic effects, we also need to look ahead. The climate crisis is already here, and we cannot afford to lose more time. We need to act while it is still possible to make a change. Now, it's good to have goals, it's good to have platforms, but we must translate this into action. We must use this opportunity to build back better and take concrete steps towards a greener and more inclusive future, leaving no one behind. As Lars Hans said in the keynote, let's turn the challenges into our business plans. So, dear friends, this event highlights the need to make the global goals our business. It is an opportunity in the coming 2 days to share innovations and solutions, to strengthen our partnerships, to accelerate our concrete actions towards a green and inclusive future. I want to thank everyone for your commitment. You can count on Sweden's continued support in Georgia, in the region, and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tideström. Thank you for your support to our government, to our country, to also indirect support to the business sectors that you are providing through promoting the sustainability approaches with them. You have noted we are all part of a problem and we all need to be part of the solution. This is the main message that we need to discuss also during these 2 days, how to be more actively part of the solution today in partnership with each other. So thank you very much for your words and your support. Now it is my pleasure to give the floor to our partner country representative, Mr. Oleksiy Ryabchin, Energy and EU Green Deal Advisor to Deputy Prime Minister of European and Euro-Atlantic Integration of Ukraine, also Climate Policy Advisor to Minister of Environmental Protection and Natural Resources of Ukraine. Dear Ryabchin, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Salome. Gamarjoba from Kyiv to my beloved Tbilisi. I'm really happy to be here, at least in a virtual capacity, but always Ukrainian love to travel to Georgia. And we do hope that the coronavirus will end up soon and we will be able to travel and to sit and to look to each other to discuss such an important topic as the climate change and the support of the government, business, civil society towards it. I guess I won't preach to a choir just to say how important things, related to climate change issue. I guess like if you are here at this panel, like, definitely this is the importance of this topic. You don't hear for the PR, for the greenwashing, you hear for trying to push things forward because as the Excellency from Sweden said, like the global warming is there, the climate change is there, and we are too slow to respond. And this is the task of our generation to to leave the planet with at least the same opportunities for our children and for our grandchildren, and it's like a really vital process. I guess to regard to Ukraine, I would like to share some of our experience, like what we are doing here, because with a distinguished representative from Poland, Turkey, Belarus, Sweden, and other nations that are here, it might be valuable. For us, for Ukraine, the things related to the sustainable development goal, to the climate change, are the foundation and the integral part of our European and Euro-Atlantic integration. Basically, likewise, Georgia, Ukraine has its association agreement, has the DCFTA and other documents. I used to be the member of parliament of the previous convocation. I'm really proud for Ukrainian parliament become the third in the world to ratify Paris Climate Agreement. It's really for me a big honor because I'm 50 years in this topic as a scientist, as a business person, as a academia, as a politician, currently as an advisor, and for us it was a big stuff. And currently all our we have huge amount of climate obligation in our association agreement, and we are moving progressively towards it by creating emission trading system, by imposing the carbon pricing, by adopting a lot of different low carbon strategies and then energy and climate stuff. And I bet we have a lot of things in common with Georgia, Moldova, Belarus, and other countries of the Eastern Partnership. And Ukraine feel, its responsibility to be the leading country in the Black Sea, which have the capacity, which has a huge amount of challenges and opportunities, and to be a role model for our neighbors and for our partners. And as for our European integration, we see the progress and dynamic in regard to the European Green Deal. So this big economic and innovation strategy of European Union. And I always try to say that it's not about the environment, it's not about only climate. It's an economic and innovative strategy of European Union. It was really greatly intercoordinated different branches of different sectors, coordinated under this European Green Deal. Of course, for the European Union and for the European Commission, it's quite a challenge to push this agenda forward. We do happy that the United States also joined this process, and we will, I do hope, see even the fight for the leadership between the two great countries in regard to this, and we are looking forward for the COP26 in Glasgow. It's a shame that it has been postponed. It should have been my sixth participant of COP. I'm also a climate change negotiator from Ukraine for 5 years. It's really important. It's really important process, and we are now finalizing our second national German contribution under the Paris Agreement. It will be more ambitious than it used to be, and it's really interesting to see the internal discussions between the, let's say, more conservative part, represented business, industries, who is a bit afraid of the climate change and big ambitious, and the more progressive part. So we have a great debate, and we will find a compromise. But the biggest question that everybody is asking when you're saying, like, we would like to have an ambitious NDC, what resources do we have as country? Because we are not eligible as a country to the GCF, Green Global Fund, which has around 17 to 20 billion dollars to spend. When we see and compare how much money does Poland or like Romania or Bulgaria receive from the European Union for its transformation, for its Green Deal, and when we think about the climate neutral continent, so not climate neutral European Union, but continent, and we perceive Ukraine as a country on the European continent, like it's required a huge amount of finance, and we are speaking about no one left behind. We have a huge coal mining industry, which we have ambitions to close, but how to retrain the workers, how to build up a sophisticated policy, what do you do with the coal mining region and many other spheres. It's quite a challenging, sophisticated issue. Moreover, I guess what is common for our economies is that we are facing an enormous challenges by doing simultaneously market reforms, by building a proper energy, gas market, and other type of markets, and decarbonization at that time, because usually the more developed economies, like first they have the market in place, and then the market sends a proper signal for the decarbonization and for the climate ambitions. And like our countries, our economies is doing the same simultaneously, and it's often failed because in Ukraine we have a very ambitious program of supporting renewables. It rose dramatically since like last 5 years from 3 to 7% in total, but this 7%, it's 20% of the whole energy budget. So like we are under the big debts for the people who invested in Ukraine in renewables, and our market is not generating enough of cash to pay the investor what the country has promised. And this is only the one problem of how you will deal with the Green Deal, is this economic transformation. And this is where we need to find a common solution, and we are ready to provide knowledge-intensive support to all of our partners, not to face our mistake. I guess this is the most valuable experience. Of course, we have a lot of successful cases. For example, in Ukraine, we have more electric vehicles than Poland and Russia altogether. And the enormous amount of these electric vehicles, of course, it's like used vehicles brought from the United States or Germany, but yet the more EVs you have, the more chargers infrastructure you will receive. And we have huge amount of companies, SMEs, who is now designing and crafting and producing chargers, like produced like 100% in Ukraine. We have very talented IT people, because chargers consist of some, metallurgical part, electrical part, and like IT software. And we are ready to ship, these chargers and to connect Kyiv with Lisbon, Kyiv with Tbilisi, if it's possible, like for us to travel the clean vehicles. And now this kind of transformation of our economy is a necessity. We have, under the Green Deal, have a very productive discussion with our European partners, and the highest political level of our Ukrainian Prime Minister, Denis Shmyhal, has a focused dialogue with the Vice President of the European Commission, Frans Timmermans. At the top management level, the Deputy Prime Minister, Stefanishina, that I'm working with, she is coordinating the task force of the relevant ministers, deputy minister, with the representative from the European Commission, and it's a regular exchange of news, of opinions, and we are our task is to create some flagship initiative and to throw it to a political level. We already have 4 flagship initiative is energy efficiency, transition of a coal mine region, hydrogen economy, and the creation of a climate governance architecture. This is a very important, which consists of strategies, carbon pricing, some incentives, some, and I know, climate mitigation adaptation strategy. So a lot of it, how you govern this climate transformation is really important. And maybe to finalize, it's really important to touch upon to integrate our economy sustainable business into European value chains to produce, and I know, hydrogen production, storage, production of batteries, digital technology, critical raw materials. Like, we would like to be a part of this value chain to have the green jobs and to have more of this integration. I guess it's important to discuss also a climate skepticism, because I truly believe that, like, Georgians also as Ukrainians have a lot of other challenges, like corruption, like poverty, like war, like occupation of Russia, and many other. And this is a top priority. And for politicians who are here, it's like it's difficult to campaign with the green agenda, because this is not what the people here feels like. And it's not like Sweden, when you have bipartisan consensus on the environmental issues. So you don't have a debate, because, like, per se, like, everybody needs to invest in environment. And for government, this is a justification of spending. If people wish government to spend money on roads and hospitals, it will be spent there, not on the climate, unfortunately. So this is kind of, we have a huge amount of leaders here. So it's like, should be top-down approach, but also a bottom-up. Like, without this, it won't work. And also, I will leave us with the question of CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. I guess it's really important for us, for Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, and other countries, which does have the association agreement, to unite our efforts and to send a signal to European Commission that we have our climate ambition. We have our association agreement, and our climate change infrastructure and ambition are related to this, and like imposing a CBAM will be a very unfriendly act, which might hamper our European integration and might lead to a very big, political distortion. So we need to discuss how to have a kind of waiver out of this, or how to do the leverage or postponing, how it could be discounted from this. So one more time, greetings from today's sunny Kyiv. We don't have snow finally, so wish you a very productive discussion. Like, we would like to visit your country, and you're kindly invited to Ukraine, and let's unite our efforts, because we can make changes from our efforts. We could do this. So thank you very much, and big hi on behalf of the Vice Prime Minister of Ukraine, Olga Stefanishyna.
Mr. Rabshin, thank you very much for your very important remarks and information on the progress of Ukrainian government on achieving the Paris Agreement, the successful practices of the companies, the incentives you have for the business sector in this regard. So thank you very much for this fruitful presentation. And we are looking forward to hosting you in Georgia after we are over with the COVID pandemic, and we will have the possibility to travel. Thank you once again for your participation in the event. Now it is my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Levan Akhvlediani, Chair of the Board of the Global Compact Network Georgia.
Thank you, Salome. Dear ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank my colleagues and high-level state representatives for this opening panel, for very inspiring speeches. Also, I want to thank the partner networks from Ukraine, from Belarus, from Poland and Turkey for helping us to organize such a high-level multi-stakeholder event. Businesses and their leaders, they also know that we have to deal with the climate problem. And it's really hard to understand what could be the planet if we are not doing our best. Companies see business growth and potential in ecologically sustainable products and services. Sustainable development goals does not only generate social benefit, but it's also profitable businesses for sectors. Me as a chair and the partner of biggest Georgian IT integrator company, I can tell you that the mentality has really changed during these years. But we as a Georgia, as a country, are really young country, and we are only 30 years of independence. So we need to work a lot, and we have to work on our businesses, work on government, work on the environment to do all we can for change it to better side. Global Compact Network Georgia has been actively working on these issues in the country to support the transformation and processes almost 5 years. The network has been promoting sustainable development agenda and the 10 principles of the United Global Compact, mobilizing business actions for sustainability in Georgia. Recently, GCNG, in partnership with UN Agenda, commenced its work on eco-environment approaches, helping small and medium enterprises to integrate ecologically friendly and innovative approaches into business operations. Inclusion of the SMEs in the process of the work that GCNG is doing with large companies and other stakeholders on the ground is very important for driving green transformation in our country. At the same time, we should not forget that transformation needs to be inclusive, addressing to needs of the vulnerable groups. I'm sure we will have very fruitful discussions during these 2 days, and this will motivate the further cooperation actions in Georgia and other participating countries. Looking forward to all the interesting discussions. Thank you. Salome.
Dear Levan, thank you so much for your words and for your support to the Global Compact Network. The company you represent has been part of the network for a long time and a very active member. So we also appreciate your support throughout the process of you being the part of the board and actually the chair of the board. So thank you once again for this. Once again, I would like to thank all the panelists for very important remarks. Your support to this process is very important. And this was a great opening for the MGGLB Georgia for the discussions that were very interesting discussions that will follow around the green economy, the green innovations, very important topics for Georgia and for the participating countries.